All right, what's going on, everybody? Well, I did a video about this fight about a month ago, and I'm going to highlight some of the points that I made in that video, but I'm also going to add some more points because the more I thought about this fight and the more I've been thinking about this fight, the more and more I say to myself, I honestly believe Pacquiao is real live here. He's real live here. uh when the fight was first announced, um I favored Spence. I thought it was more along the lines of a 60-40 fight in favor of Spence, right? But now the more I think about it and I really look at the two styles, uh I'm having second thoughts. So now I'm starting to think that I'm still favoring Spence, but it's slightly now. I think he's like it's a 55-45 fight. And I think everybody's banking on the fact, or not even the fact. I know a lot of people like to throw that word around loosely. I'm not even going to use that word here. A lot of people are banking on Manny Pacquiao getting old overnight, being 42 years old, obviously being past his prime. But you have to say and ask yourself, remember way back when Pacquiao was elite, him and Mayweather was so far above everybody else. So even if he does drop down, he's still going to be a formidable fighter. I picked him to beat Keith Thurman uh, 2 years ago, back in 2019 in June. A lot of people didn't think he could win that fight. Keith Thurman started out being the favorite, and come fight time, Manny Pacquiao ended up being the favorite. He was a slight favorite. Keith Thurman opened up as a slight favorite himself. So let's talk about this. Manny Pacquiao at welterweight has only been knocked out one time, right? He's only been knocked out one time, and that was by Juan Manuel Marquez, and that was a while ago. So in the last 22 years, Manny Pacquiao's only been knocked out once, and that's because he walked into the perfect shot, all right, by Juan Manuel Marquez. So neither man has faced a southpaw for a while. Now, the last southpaw that Errol Spence fought was Chris Van Heerden back in 2015. He took care of him in 8 rounds. Manny Pacquiao, David Diaz back in 2008, took care of him in 9. So both guys in their last fights with southpaws scored stoppage victories. But as I said before, Manny Pacquiao does not fight like the typical southpaw. Manny Pacquiao is actually right-handed, does a lot of things right-handed. He writes with his right hand, eats with his right hand, but he boxes from the southpaw stance, right? So I talked about Manny Pacquiao being a southpaw, but not fighting like the traditional southpaw, because Manny Pacquiao uncharacteristically moves to his left, while most southpaws, just about all the southpaws that I see, they move to their right when they're stepping in and attacking their opponent. Fighters tend to move in the direction of their lead hand. It's just like dancing. When you dance, your lead foot, you move in that direction. It's the same thing with boxing. It's just a natural movement. It's more comfortable for boxers to do that. And obviously they can change directions, but more often than not, they tend to move to the direction of the lead hand. Manny Pacquiao moves in the opposite direction. He'll step off to his left, and then that's when he throws his straight left. So when he fights right-handed fighters, he has a tendency to walk into their right hands. And he walked into a lot of right hands by Keith Thurman, but Keith Thurman is just not a real big right hand puncher. He's more of a left hook puncher. So the guys that Manny Pacquiao had problems with were really right hand dominant fighters. Marquez, Mayweather, Morales, those types of fighters. And when you look at Manny Pacquiao stoppage victories, it's always really been stopped by right hands. He's been stopped 3 times. And like I said, he hasn't been stopped in 22 years. But the likelihood of him getting stopped if he is going to get stopped is by a right hand, because he tends to just walk right into it, and he adds to the impact of it because he moves right into it. Now he's going to be fighting Errol Spence, the southpaw. Spence does fight like a traditional southpaw. He does move to his right. So you're going to have Spence moving to his right, and you're going to have Manny Pacquiao moving to his left. So Manny Pacquiao is going to be moving out of the way. He's going to be stepping away from the power hand of Spence, while Spence is going to be moving into the power hand of Pacquiao, right? So that's something to look at here, because styles make fights. We say that all the time, right? Big punch that most southpaws have to worry about is the right hand, but Manny Pacquiao more so than most southpaws, because he walks into it. He has a tendency to move into the direction of that right hand. In this case, he won't be moving into the direction. He's not going to have to deal with that. He's not going to be moving into anyone's right hand, because he's going to be moving away. And then Spence's big weapon here, I believe, is the jab, right? Because Spence is going to have to use that jab to time Manny Pacquiao coming in. He's going to have to keep him at bay and not allow Manny Pacquiao, because Manny Pacquiao loves to go in and out. He's an ambush guy. He loves to step into that mid-range area of the pocket and boom, 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 fire off those flurries and step back out, right? Well, Spence is going to be jabbing down. Now, we talk about leverage when punches are being thrown. So a taller fighter who's fighting a shorter fighter, the taller fighter is going to be throwing the power punch. Whether it be an orthodox fighter, he's going to be throwing the right hand. He's going to come over the top and kind of be punching down, so he can shift his weight and get the leverage and really put his weight shifting down. The shorter fighter's got to reach up with the power shot. He's got to reach up with the power shot, right? That's going to take a lot of leverage off the power punch. But a jab is kind of different, because when you're in the gym, you're taught to throw a jab either straight or you throw like an up jab, right? Because that punch can be used as an offensive weapon to hurt your opponent, but it's used for so many other reasons too. It can be a rhythm disruptor, gauging range, obviously. It could be used as a defensive weapon. When you're stepping out, you throw a jab out there just to keep prevent your opponent from throwing something back at you. But it's really awkward for someone to have to jab down at the shorter fighter, because the shorter fighter's getting low, right? A lot of times the jab will seal over his head or just graze the top of his head. So the jab would be the key weapon here, as I said, because that's going to keep Manny Pacquiao at bay when he comes in. He's going to have to time him with that jab to prevent them from those onrushing attacks, right? But if Manny Pacquiao is getting under that jab, then he's going to have an entry point, right? Because if he can get under that jab, he's going to have an entry point. He's going to be able to go in and tuck under that jab. And I think that Errol Spence could possibly have problems landing that jab against Manny Pacquiao. I think he can have problems landing that straight left, right? I think he's going to have a lot of problems too with the body shots, because the thing about Manny Pacquiao is guys do try to crowd him, right? We've seen guys try to outmuscle him on the inside and try to crowd him, right? But he always seems to be able to pivot out. So when a guy comes at him and tries to trap him or pin him up against the ropes or pin him in a corner, right? He always tends to pivot out. Just turns out he never stands straight in front of you. Like, people talk about the angles. That's great, but let's talk about the defensive angles that he gives you. You come at him, you think you got him pinned down, and what does he do? Either pivots out to his right, or he'll just spin out to the left, right? We've seen him do that several times. So Spence is more of a stalker type guy, right? He's more of a stalker type guy. He likes to walk you down, pin you up against the ropes, and that's when he tends to throw combinations. When he's got you in the center of the ring, he's trying to probes you with that jab and tries to set up that left hook, that straight left, because he likes to land that straight left, so then he can kind of freeze you, and that's when he slides in and starts ripping those body shots. So Spence likes to either pin you up against the ropes, back into a corner, or likes to stun you and freeze you, hurt you. Then he slides in and starts putting shots together. Manny Pacquiao's constantly throwing flurries. So he's a much more busier guy when it comes to throwing punches. Spence is more calculated. He's more methodical. He likes to really open up on you. He likes to hurt you first. Then he likes to open up on you, or he likes to pin you up against the ropes by just putting pressure on you and walking you back, right? And that's when he starts to rip that body attack on you. But it's going to be hard to do that with Manny Pacquiao because of his foot speed and because he's constantly moving, pivoting off to the side or stepping off to the side. He's not going to stand in front of Errol Spence like many other guys have done. So the guys who give Manny Pacquiao problems are the guys, like I said, with the big right hands, but also the guys who are counterpunchers. Because Manny Pacquiao has always gotten himself into trouble, gotten himself hurt and stunned in fights because people have timed him and countered him with the right hand. Spence is not that type of fighter. He's not a counter puncher. Okay, he's not a counter puncher. He's a seek and destroy stalker. Okay, that doesn't mean that he doesn't have a great jab. That doesn't mean that that doesn't have great punch placement. Doesn't mean that he's not explosive. Doesn't mean that he doesn't have quick hands. We're not taking anything away from Spence here, but we're just looking at empirical data here. How does the guy fight? He's a seek and destroy guy. And then there are other times when he'll just stay on the outside like he did against Mikey Garcia and just probe from the outside, right? But it's hard to do that against a guy who's not going to stand in front of you. It's hard to do that against a guy who's going to keep going in and out on you. Now, let's look at another fight of Spence's where it was a close fight and a much more competitive fight than I thought it would be and many others thought it would be. His split decision victory against Sean Porter. Sean Porter does have some similarities, and I stress the word some similarities. He's not the same fighter as Manny Pacquiao, but he's an ambush guy too. He likes to go in and out as well too. And because Sean Porter was going in and out against Spence, Spence had problems pinning Sean Porter down because Spence, Porter would go in, throw a flurry and just jump back out, and Spence had a hard time timing him on the way out. So there would be times where, Porter would throw a quick foot feint and kind of freeze Spence. He'd go in, and before Spence could throw back, he was out of there. So Pacquiao, like I said, he's an ambush guy too. So when you force Spence to have to go looking for you, right, and he can't freeze you and pin you down, then he's shown to have problems with guys. And Spence, like I said, too, starts a little bit slow. So I think Manny Pacquiao has the potential to cause a ton of problems for Errol Spence because of the movement, the foot speed, and just the unorthodox way that he attacks. Okay. Manny Pacquiao is probably one of the most distinctive fighters that I've ever seen. He just does so many unorthodox things in there that you're not used to seeing fighters do. So because Manny Pacquiao is going to be that small target, because Manny Pacquiao is going to be that moving target, because Manny Pacquiao never stands straight in front of his opponent, Spence is going to really have a hard time pinning Manny Pacquiao down. He's going to have a hard time pinning Manny Pacquiao down. He's going to have a hard time landing that power shot with the left hand because Manny Pacquiao is going to be moving away from it, right? He's going to have a hard time landing that jab because Manny Pacquiao is going to be getting low, right? And he's going to slide underneath it, right? And then when Spence tries to bend his knees and tries to shoot that jab to the body, which he loves to do, Manny Pacquiao is such a compact target. He fights with a high guard and keeps his elbows tucked and stuff. I just think that Spence may have a harder time hitting Pacquiao than a lot of people think. And I think Pacquiao, because he's such an offensive dynamo, because he throws so many punches, I think Pacquiao is definitely live here. He, like I said, He's not going to be in there with that right hand counter puncher style that gives him problems. He's going to be in there with a seek and destroy guy. We've never seen anyone really walk Manny Pacquiao down, walk him down, and just overpower him. Manny Pacquiao pretty much has beat himself in fights by basically walking into that right hand, right? Walking into that power shot, leaping in and having guys time him leaping in with the right hand, right? Guys who can step back, slide back. Spence is not that guy. He's not that slick counterpuncher. He's not that guy that steps back. He's not that guy that is looking to fight on the back foot. He's looking to fight on the front foot. So the guys who can fight on the back foot and the guys who have that sharp right hand and the guys who like to counterpunch and slide back and catch guys coming in, those are the guys that have the most success against Manny Pacquiao. We've never seen anyone, I repeat, try to walk forward, stalk him, and overpower him. Ricky Hatton tried it. Miguel Cotto tried it. Oscar De La Hoya tried it. Tonio Margarito tried it. And he's looked the best against guys like that. So, as I said, neither guy has scored a stoppage in a while, right? So Spence hasn't scored a stoppage in his last 3 fights, right? Porter, Garcia, and both Garcias actually, Mikey and Danny, right? And we saw how, Spence really didn't seem as aggressive in his last fight against Danny Garcia. So that's another thing we have to look at. Did Spence lose some of that fire, some of that killer instinct? Did that car accident have an effect on him, right? Did that have an effect on him? We've seen Manny Pacquiao get starched by Juan Manuel Marquez, and people were saying, even myself were questioning, could he come back from a vicious knockout like that? Came back and became a champion 2 times over after that, right? Became a champion 2 times over after that. And it's funny because when this fight was first announced, Spence was a -450 and Pacquiao was a +350. Now Spence is a -225 and Pacquiao's a +176. And then when you look at Pacquiao in training, and I'm going to sound like a hypocrite here because a lot of times I downplay this training footage, right? So when I was watching the Deontay Wilder training footage, what I'm looking for is differences in strategy. I'm looking for him to work on fighting on the inside, how to deal with someone mauling him, how to deal with a rough and tumble physical fight on the inside, because that's why he lost against Fury, right? But when I'm looking at Pacquiao, I'm not really looking at a change of tactics because his style has been pretty solid over the years. And it's a very versatile style. It's a very unorthodox style. So he has so many different things he can do in there where Wilder has shown just to kind of be the same fighter, do a lot of the same things over and over again, where Pacquiao is he's just so hard to pin down because he's constantly giving that little foot feint, giving that pump fake. There's so many little nuances to Pacquiao's game where he can open up his offense. He can freeze his opponent. He can frustrate his opponent. He can create those entry points for himself. So I'm not looking for any tactical changes when I'm watching Manny Pacquiao train. What I'm looking for is slippage and reflexes. I'm looking at how the punches are coming out. Are they slower? Are they being telegraphed? Are they more arm punches? Is there less snap on them? Of course, the reflexes have dulled. They have to dull. Mother Nature gets the best of us all. But I'm not seeing that much of a difference in speed, reflexes. I'm just not. This is a guy who's always taken care of himself. He's like Mayweather, right? He's never, ever gotten out of shape in between fights. Probably walks around at about 150, right? So his training camps are not conditioning camps because he's always doing something even when he's not fighting, right? He's always doing some type of physical activity. He's one of those guys that eats, sleeps, and drinks the sport of boxing. Even when he doesn't have a fight, he's still concerned about keeping himself in the best physical condition, right? So you may look at these 2 years and say this is a problem for Manny Pacquiao, but maybe it's not. Maybe he let his body heal up and he was able to just work on his conditioning and just did light training. Sometimes it's good to take a break from the sparring. Sometimes it's good to take a break from hitting the heavy bags and constantly having that impact on your joints. Sometimes it's good to just go out and do conditioning work, right? Let your body heal up. Train at a lower intensity just to get that blood flowing, right? So your body can heal, right? That's a good thing. With all due respect to Spence, in between fights, I'm seeing him kind of, again, I don't follow the guy around 24/7, but I see a lot of him going out and partying, and there's been talks about him drinking and going to these events, kind of drinking, partying it up, going to the clubs. Pacquiao is a family man. He's a senator. Doesn't really have much time to screw around. I'm sure he may have dabbled in it earlier in his career, but this is a different man now. He's a grown man, right? So you can make an argument that Pacquiao probably lives a more disciplined lifestyle than Errol Spence does in between fights. And I know Errol Spence has had a history of blowing up, getting up to like 170. Something. I think he even said one time he was up to 190 in between fights. And this is a guy who's fighting at 147. So are we going to totally disregard and discount the 42 years of age of Manny Pacquiao? No. But until I see Father Time not just knock on the door, but until I see Father Time smash that door down, right, and walk into Manny Pacquiao's house, right, and say, freeze, hands up, you're coming with me. Till I see Father Time do that, I'm going to assume and I'm going to assess Manny Pacquiao at as close to his best as possible, right? It's funny. Keith Thurman was in his prime when Manny Pacquiao fought him. You can argue that he was coming off a layoff, whatever. But Manny Pacquiao looked faster than Keith Thurman, right? And you can make an argument that Keith Thurman is faster than Errol Spence. So, and you can make an argument that, Sean Porter has quicker foot speed than Errol Spence as well, which I do believe he does. And we saw that made the fight difficult for Spence. So, like I said, I just think the speed, the movement, the unorthodox attack patterns, just there's a lot of things that Manny Pacquiao brings to the table that are going to be problematic for Errol Spence. The way people are talking that Errol Spence is too big, too strong, he's just going to walk Manny Pacquiao down, overwhelm him, and just stop him. But we've never seen anyone do that to Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao's always, since gotten hurt or knocked out from counterpunches, him walking into shots, him being too aggressive, him making the mistake, right? Spence stops guys by overwhelming them, right? Walks them down, like I said, backs them in the corner. Pacquiao's never lost that way. No one's ever been able to do that to Manny Pacquiao, right? No one. So you can make an argument here that Pacquiao is the faster fighter. You can make an argument here that Pacquiao may not be as far along as we think, and Spence may not be that Errol Spence, that same Errol Spence that knocked out Kell Brook. There is a possibility that some of the hard living that Spence has done over the years in between fights, there is a possibility that car accident Those two things may have an effect on Spence. Now, obviously, we got to cut him some slack in his last fight. That was his first fight back against Danny Garcia. But again, he did not seem to have that killer instinct. Now, when we saw Manny Pacquiao versus Keith Thurman, he was coming off of a little bit of a layoff in that fight as well. He still fought like the same old Manny Pacquiao. So Manny Pacquiao just doesn't skip a beat, right? Doesn't skip a beat. Where Errol Spence, starts slowing fights, sometimes has a hard time tracking guys down, but once he does land that fight-changing punch, that's when the fight turns. So what happens in this fight if he's not able to land that fight-changing punch that stops Manny Pacquiao in his tracks? What happens if Manny Pacquiao will not oblige Errol Spence and not stand in the pocket and trade with him? He'll just stay in there long enough to get his shots off, and he'll get out. Manny Pacquiao is going to fight probably one of the smartest fights of his life in this fight, because you know why? He knows he has to, because if he doesn't, it's lights out. Both guys are going to have a lot of respect for each other. And then you could also say, will Spence be in awe of Manny Pacquiao? He's fighting a legend. He is fighting a legend in Errol Spence. Errol Spence is fighting a legend in Manny Pacquiao. Sorry about that. Errol Spence is fighting a legend in Manny Pacquiao. This is the biggest fight of Errol Spence's career. Manny Pacquiao's been here before, right? Manny Pacquiao's fought Mayweather. He's fought Cotto, right? He's fought Shane Mosley, fought Oscar De La Hoya, right? He's been in mega events, right? I'm just curious to see if Errol Spence will be in awe of this legend. So I may not be too hesitant here to lay small bet on Manny Pacquiao. I would hedge it with betting the fight goes the distance, and I would bet Manny Pacquiao to win, because I think the fight goes the distance. I don't think that we're going to see a knockout here. I just don't. Errol Spence has not scored a knockout in his last 3 fights. You mean to tell me that Mikey Garcia and Sean Porter and Danny Garcia are better than Manny Pacquiao? You can make an argument that maybe Sean Porter at this point, maybe, but I think Manny Pacquiao would beat both Garcias, Danny and Mikey. I just do. And I'd give him a great shot to beat Porter as well. So, like I said, I think Manny Pacquiao is very, very live here. I'm still slightly favoring Spence, but, the more I think about this fight and analyze it and just look at both guys' careers and how they performed against certain styles, I just say to myself, the style that has given Manny Pacquiao so many problems over his career is not the style that Errol Spence possesses. It's just not. Spence is not that right hand slick counter puncher that steps back, fights off the back foot, guys that can walk Manny Pacquiao into traps with that right hand. Spence is not that guy. And I've never seen anyone, even at welterweight, fight. He's fought bigger guys time and time again, right? No one's ever been able to walk Manny Pacquiao down. And unless Spence has him pinned in the corner, like I said before, pinned up against the ropes, he's not a real huge combination puncher. In the center of the ring, Spence is a 1-2 type puncher, right? He doesn't stop throwing those hooks and body shots and uppercuts till he's up close, right? He doesn't throw those 3 or 4 punch combinations until he's got you either hurt or pinned up against the ropes. Manny Pacquiao's constantly throwing combinations. Fucking guy's probably throwing combinations in his sleep. That's what he does. This is a volume guy. And then you can make an argument, he didn't throw a lot of punches against Mayweather, didn't throw a lot of punches against Marquez. But again, that's the slick counter puncher, fight off the back foot, walk guys into traps. That's the type of style that will minimize his output. When you look at a guy like Errol Spence, that's not the style that will minimize Pacquiao's output unless he hurts him, right? It's gonna have to hurt him, but also too, Spence is not a one punch knockout guy. We've seen Pacquiao knock people out with one punch, right? Spence really isn't that one punch knockout guy. I've never seen him knock anyone out with one shot, right? A lot of times he'll end fights with guys still standing up against the ropes. I just can't picture him pinning Manny Pacquiao up against the ropes and keeping him there, or keeping him in a corner, and I just don't think Pacquiao is going to stay there. I think he's going to pivot out or spin out. I just think this is going to be a really difficult style matchup for Errol Spence. All right, guys, that's all I got. The closer this fight gets, the more and more excited I am for it. And yeah. Shout out to all you Manny Pacquiao fans, because if you're clicking on this video, you're hearing some stuff that you're going to like, man. So tell a friend to tell a friend, share the video, like the video. Until next time, Bieber's out. Talk to y'all soon. Have a great day. Make sure you check out the Ringside Reporter podcast, 6 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow night. Before you join the Boxing Voice at 7, all you Boxing Voice listeners, come listen to us first, right? And then after you finish listening to us, go right over to Ness's channel and listen to the Boxing Voice. Get 2 for 1 here, right? Get 2 for 1. All right. We got a great unification fight. Brian Castano versus Jamel Charlo. It's going to be a phenomenal fight. Looking forward to that as well. Bieber's out. Like I said, until next time, stay safe, everybody. Talk to y'all soon. Have a great day.